20 years ago, after the release of Metroid Fusion, word came out of Nintendo that a sequel to Metroid Fusion was being developed. This would be the fifth mainline Metroid game. 2002 was when it was first announced. This game wouldn't get an official release date until 2021, more than 19 years later. This is a Metroid Dread review. Metroid is one of Nintendo's 2D platformer adventure games. Metroid, the first game in the series, was released in 1986. It quickly rose in popularity. Metroid became one of Nintendo's most notable series, growing alongside The Legend of Zelda and Super Mario. The series initially got a lot of love from Nintendo, but that love soon faded after the fourth game in the series, Metroid Fusion. They completely left the 2D Metroid series dormant for 20 years. Sure, we got the Prime games, Other M, remakes, and other great spin-offs. We didn't see an original 2D Metroid game after the release of Fusion. In 2017, Nintendo announced the fourth installment in the first-person shooter Metroid Prime series, Metroid Prime 4. 2 years later, they said they had scrapped the game and left it in the good hands of Retro Studios. 2 more years later, during their E3 2021 Direct, Shinya Takahashi said they have nothing new to show about Metroid Prime 4 being developed by Retro Studios. But they did have something new to show. After nearly 20 years of being leaked, rumored, cancelled, and leaked again, they announced the fifth mainline 2D Metroid game being developed by Mercury Steam. Actually, it wasn't being developed. It was done, ready for release. They announced the release date of October 8th. When Nintendo was showing it off at their E3 and through trailers, I was impressed. Nintendo pushed this game to the max. I was excited. With all that background information out of the way, let's start. As always, I'll be reviewing the game on 3 things that make a game a game. 1. The personality. This includes the story, narratives, progression, characters, and more. 2. The body. Graphics, animation, how it runs, all that stuff. 3. The soul. The gameplay, physics, controls, moves, and attacks. Let's start with the story. Since this game is still new, I won't spoil the story entirely. I'll only be talking about its progression and the start of the story. Metroid Dread takes place on a planet ZDR. Planet ZDR is said to be a home to Chozo tribe. ZDR is a dormant planet with most of the Chozo gone. After the events of Metroid Fusion, where on planet SR388, a parasite called the X is detected. I won't get into detail about Fusion's story, but in the end, Samus is infused with Metroid DNA and X DNA. After that, the X is thought of to be extinct. Many years later, the X is detected again, this time on planet ZDR. 7 very protected and extremely intelligent AI drones are sent to ZDR. They are known as EMI. However, shortly after arriving on this mysterious planet, communication signals are lost with all 7 EMIs. Now she enters. Samus Aran, the main protagonist of the Metroid series. She is sent to ZDR to investigate herself. That is where the story begins. Everything I've stated has been said before in Nintendo's trailers and in their E3 Treehouse showcase. I think the story is alright. It ties together Metroid lore pretty nicely. One thing I don't like is the progression. You're basically thrown into a random world, stripped with all your power, and you have no idea what's going on, which is fine. I don't like how you have no idea what's going on until 6 to 7 hours into the game. This is at most bearable. You basically get everything dumped on you by an NPC. You then keep going without knowing any other information until the final boss. I'm still pretty disappointed with the story. The story itself is alright, but the progression of the plot is absolute garbage. But there were a few plot twists that I really liked and were presented nicely. The ending is pretty abrupt as well. It definitely is cool and gets rid of any other questions you may have about the lore, but that's about it. The game just sort of stops. It doesn't feel like this is the last game in the storyline as Nintendo is stating it. Characters also have very little worth. It most revolves around Samus and Ravenbeak, and that's not just because they're main characters in the story, it's because they're basically the only ones. Aside from them, we have Quiet Row, who's pretty cool and has an impact on the story, and Adam, who's literally just a guide. It's fine that the game doesn't have any characters, but at least put in worth into the ones you have. None of the characters are really memorable. And there's barely enough dialogue in the game for this to be a fully voiced game. Samus has like 2 voice lines, all in some weird alien language, Ravenbeak also has a few in the alien language, and Quiet Robe has some also in the alien language. Adam is the only one who speaks English or whatever language you chose throughout the game. Overall, I would give the story a 6 out of 10. Enough to satisfy me, but points are taken away for being presented in an unsatisfying, lazy way that fails to really move me. The gameplay in Metroid Dread can be described as quick, snappy, and satisfying. At the start of the game, we have a jump, beam, slide, melee counter, and rocket missile. As you progress, you gain a crap ton of abilities. Heat resistance, ice resistance, an extra jump, infinite jumps, charge beam, triple wide beam, triple charge beam, plasma beam, wave beam, storm missile, grappling hook, invisibility, speed booster, Aeon shift, and many, many, many more. It's insane. I was a bit disappointed when we started out with a small number of moves, but the game quickly made up for it by giving us a crap ton of power-ups pretty frequently. As for the Emmy, the game definitely deserves the title of Dread. The AI is quick, agile, and it can appear out of nowhere. It's pretty hard to outrun. Love Mercury Steam's AI design with this one. Everything is very quick, snappy, and super crisp. The level design is incredible. Sure, because of this expansive map, glitches and skips are more abundant, but the level design is just incredible. I was amazed. The Emmy is great. It's incredibly smart, but sometimes it can spawn in a certain location which makes it predictable. Moving on to the last part. Since this game is on Switch, I didn't expect much graphic-wise, but I've gotta say, first Monster Hunter Rise, and now this. Metroid Dread is amazing graphically. Every substance is so neat and crisp, the lighting, the shadow work, it's perfect. This game looks amazing. What isn't so amazing is the music. Off the top of my head, I could probably hum out the general tunes of 3, maybe 4 of the themes. This game isn't memorable music-wise. There is the main theme which is kind of recognizable, but it barely plays. We mainly only hear it in the opening story recap. But still, since this game runs so well, and since it's really graphically impressive, I'll give it an 8.5, taking a massive hit for barely any music. Other than that, the sound effects, movie effects, the blend in and out of cutscenes are like never seen before on Switch. Metroid Dread, after 20 years of being cancelled and rumored in development and recancelled, uncancelled just to never come out, had left us all very confused. Metroid Dread quickly became one of gaming's biggest mysteries, but the thing is, Nintendo never said a word about it, so naturally people are gonna make assumptions about it still being a thing. After 20 years, it hit hard. It was even nominated for Best Action Adventure Game and Game of the Year for Jeff Keighley's Game Awards 2021. From what I hear, it's getting a massive amount of votes, but unfortunately, the power remains in the voting jury, who will surely not allow a 2D game on the Switch to win. It would be amazing to see, though. Overall, Metroid Dread does a lot right. It has a nice story, amazing gameplay, phenomenal graphics, but falls short on story presentation, game progression, and music. I still think Metroid Dread was a great time, a really nice game. Mercury Steam gets a well-deserved applause from me. 8 out of 10.